Welcome to the Smart Business Revolution.
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 You want a revolution?
You say you want a revolution?
Revolution. The revolution.
It's going on right now.
Welcome to The Revolution, the Smart Business Revolution podcast, where we ask today's most successful entrepreneurs to share the tools and strategies they use to build relationships and connections to grow their revenue. Now, your host for The Revolution, John Corcoran.
All right, welcome everyone. John Corcoran here. I am your host. You know, every week I get to talk to smart CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs of all kinds of companies and organizations. You've heard it before. Go check out my archives. We've had CEOs from YPO, EO, Activation Blizzard, Lending Tree, Netflix, OpenTable, some great past episodes there. So go check them out. I'm also the co-founder of Rise25, where we help connect B2B business owners to their ideal prospects. And before introducing today's guest, I want to give a big thank you to Kate Ledun of Brandwise Media, who introduced me to today's guest. And her name is Jennifer Rotner. She is the CEO and founder of Elite Creative, which consists of Elite Editing and Elite Authors. They provide writing, editing, publishing, and content marketing solutions. You've probably heard a few of their clients before: Amazon, PayPal, MGM Resorts International, the World Bank, City of New York. You've heard of that city before, Columbia University. She's also active in EO Baltimore, and we're going to dive into talking about some of the different content strategies that you should be employing today. And of course, this episode is brought to you by Rise25 Media, my company where we help B2B businesses to get clients, referrals, and strategic partnerships with done-for-you podcasts and content marketing. If you've ever been curious about starting your own podcast, I say do it. It's one of the best things I've ever done. You can email us at support@rise25media.com. All right. So Jennifer, I'm so excited to have you here. And I want to start with the near-death experience that your business had. You had this 2-year period where you're building up your business to prepare for growth, to serve one key client. And then one day it all came crashing down. Tell me that story, what that was like, what that moment was like. And then we'll get into how you rebounded from it, because it's an incredible story.
Thank you. Yeah. I love that we got there really quickly when we started talking. You said, did you ever have a rough moment? And I'm like, yeah, there's one that comes to mind.
Seared in my brain.
Yeah. Not hard to pick out. So we had one very large client that for many years the business grew around. It's not an uncommon thing, right? For small businesses, you get one big client, they take all of your resources and time. And that's a good thing, because you learn how to grow your operations quickly in order to meet the demand. You have to get big fast in order to do that. Well, that happened to us maybe 2013. And we had this great client for many years. And they brought us into the fold on what was going on with them. It's a very large company, a Fortune 50 company. And they were going to be going through an internal merger, and basically asked us if we would help build the capacity when this merger happened. So I knew this about 2 years in advance. And I spent those 2 years planning and working on scaling up my operations in order to handle that demand. And I made the assessment that the risk of focusing solely on this for our growth plan for that period was worth it. I still stand by that. I still think it was a very good company, and all signs pointed to this was the right thing to do. So for 2 years, I really focused on operations and scaling. And obviously, you know how you preempted this conversation, so everybody knows where this is going. Unexpectedly, the company ended up essentially closing and deprecating the services that we were working on. And it happened overnight at the beginning of 2018. It was a scary amount of my revenue, if I'm going to just throw it out there and be truthful with what it was. They were about 83% of our revenue. I had a sizable company at the time. And it hit me like a rock. It was, I remember my personal account manager there, who's still is a friend, called me after hours to let me know I was going to be getting the official call the next day. And I just remember kind of sinking to the floor, not even sitting on the couch, but sitting on the ground next to the couch, just kind of needing to feel the ground beneath me. And just sitting there for several moments before I could even process what to do next. But what I did next was, call my husband, who is my rock. And I said, can you come home? This is what's happening. I need to figure out how to get out from this spot I'm sitting in. And he walked in the door and he looked at me and he goes, okay, let's do this. I'm going to order a pizza. And I said, all right, I'm going to take a shower. And we took the art off my living room wall, literally. And we put up those big whiteboard Post-it notes and whiteboarded my business until well into the night. And I still keep those Post-its rolled up in the closet. I
need to bust them out. You never know.
even moves. There's something very special about that to me, just that survival mechanism and what that represented. But I just looked at it and said, this is what I need to do to survive. And I told my team the next morning, and we got.
What was that conversation like?
I have an amazing.
They must have been fearful. They must have been fearful they're going to lose their jobs, right?
So I have 3 people that all started as freelancers. We're going to, we've talked. You and I have talked a lot about scaling up the business, and I obviously work with a very large freelance base. All 3 of these people started as freelancers in this company, and all 3 of them are on my senior leadership team. They run my company. They're incredible humans, and we're forged by fire, certainly through experiences like this and others, but it's 3 women, not to a woman did anyone ask what was going to happen to them or if we were going to be okay. I felt, we're a fully remote company. We always have been, having nothing to do with the pandemic or anything. But it just felt like kind of hands reached out on that call. And the questions that I was asked were, what do you need? What are we going to do next? How are we going to make this happen? And let's do it. There was never a moment of doubt. And I think in the end, that comes down to the level of trust that exists between this team and myself. And I think I told you this in one of our earlier conversations, but one of my employees, I'll never forget this because we're huge nerds, right? I feel like I need to say that we're editorial publishing book people. And one of them wrote me on Slack the next day and just put in this quote by Legolas from Lord of the Rings and just said, we will stand with you through the night. And this kind of feeling that I had of like, we're going to get through this together. And not only did we get through that, which we never stopped running from the second it happened. We just took off, and there was never this sense that we were going to fail. We were just going to figure it out. We did some major pivoting. It was in those next few months that I started Elite Authors, which is our second business. It's a very successful business on its own of publishing services for authors. We work directly with authors to create books. So that was a big piece of it. And then Elite Editing grew into doing a lot of content writing and content strategy in addition to editing. Those are now the 2 biggest pieces of the business by far. And, as I told you, 2018, we almost fully recovered. 2019, we doubled in size and revenue, and 2020, we doubled in size and revenue again. So wow. It wasn't that long ago on paper, but in the life cycle of my business, it feels like it was ages ago. I just feel like we've reiterated and grown so much since then.
What, if anything, would you do differently if you look back on that, going through that experience? Is there anything that you wish you had done to protect the business going into that could have possibly prevented that from happening? Yeah.
So certainly, as I said, there was a risk assessment there. And I try and learn from that now when we bring on new clients. I see new clients differently. I see big clients, those whales. When you land a whale, it's such an exciting thing, but I see it differently than I did then. I see it as a company that's going to help us grow, not a company we're going to survive off. And I wish I had that perspective and that mentality. When you bring on a whale in your small company, they cause you to have to scale very quickly. They cause you to have to make major adjustments to your operations, really focus on process, not people. You have to have the right people in place, but you can't, if you have a team of 3 people who do something really well and you bring on a client like that, you've got to be able to have 40 do it just as well. And the way to do that isn't just to find 40 great people, it's to create a process where anyone can be good. And so I now look at new clients like this that come in as this is an opportunity for us to scale up again. This is an opportunity for us to level up in terms of our operations and process and take from that where we're going next. And not treat the big clients as the be all end all, because you can't. You have to learn to survive on your own. And that was a big lesson. Another really big lesson I learned was in the aftermath of that. We had so many freelancers. So, you and I've talked about, we have a full-time base of folks, but then we also have a freelance writing and editing team of over 225 people working on a day-to-day basis. And it takes a lot to build a team like that. And a lot of them, many of these people were very close to, they're practically, they are part of the team and they're super embedded in our day-to-day. And after that happened, we were really worried about everyone. And we told everyone about the loss of the client too soon. That is honestly my biggest regret, because we grew back so quickly. And I think we told people, we might not have work for you. And so many really great folks scattered to the wind. The good thing about my business model is because so much of it is contract based, we can expand and contract as needed. But I think we contracted too quickly. And I think, having that trust in myself and in the vision of where the company is going to go at any given time, it's having the confidence to know that if anything ever happens, I'll build it back up. Don't lose those people you spent all that time hiring and training and building into your culture. So that I would do differently.
I'm curious, if you were talking to a small business that had a whale of a client that's becoming a larger and larger portion of their business, what would you say to them? What should they do? How would you advise them? Should they even take on that whale of a client? Or is there a certain threshold at which they should get a certain size before they're willing to take on a whale of a client? Or do you not turn it away? You take it, but there are certain things that you would do, that you would advise them to do.
Yeah, I'm like trying not to smile because I'm a whale hunter. One of our core values is find the yes, right? So from the very beginning, most of our services have been born out of us doing something well and a client saying, "You're good at this. What else can you do?" And we say, "What do you need?" And that's how we learn new things. I love this kind of challenge. I always say, go after the big guys. There shouldn't be a limit to what kind of business anyone should go after, an individual, a small company, a large company. I think, if you are passionate about what you do it well and you know it and you bring value to the table, you should be able to work for and with anyone. So to that, I say, no, there's nothing you should say no to. But I would say that now when we bring on big clients, I really try and do this for myself. I take time, I set aside time, and I go through a whole exercise of, what if this client was gone tomorrow? And what would I do? What would that whiteboard look like? What would need to shrink? And also, what would I take away from that? And how can I make sure that if that happened tomorrow, because it could, and it has, the business won't be in jeopardy in any way. The business shouldn't be affected by the loss of a client in any major way. And so now I go through that exercise often, even with my big clients. If they were gone tomorrow, how would that affect things? How can I safeguard things? How can I make sure that the people are safe? That's the most important thing to me. How can I make sure that these families that Elite takes care of, that Elite supports, don't ever have to worry about anything? That's a key part to how I hire, and have that plan in place.
Yeah. Give me an example, though. You said there's nothing that you feel like there's nothing you should say no to, but I imagine there's been some things that have been tempting, but you've had to say no to. So give me an example of that. Like, is it a coffee table book? Is it, hey, will you, Jennifer, will you create a movie for us? Is it where, has there been something where it's been really tempting, but you've been like, that's outside of our lane?
We create book trailers, right? So but I hear what you're saying. And absolutely. I think that what I have learned is to really know and understand our zone of genius and our center lane. And our zone of genius and center lane is writing and editing. It's words. That doesn't mean that we don't do those other creative pieces, because we do. But for something like content, We are the execution team. We're the team when there's a really great content strategy in place. We are the ones who are going to make it happen. A lot of times people are maybe going to hire a copywriter to write a blog post. We're who you hire when you need 20, 50, 100 blog posts that are 2,000 words and really high quality in SEO. But what I don't pretend to be is the content strategist, is the SEO. We don't pretend to know the data or the best way to analyze the data, because you need really good people to do that, people who do just that. So we are very clear about where we partner with others to get their genius and bring it on to supplement our team. I don't try and be a full service agency that does all those things. I really try and stay in our lane of we're editors, we're word people, and this is what we know and love and what we're going to do fantastically well.
Let's talk about that elite authors that you launched. What were the steps that you took in order to decide that was going to be your new direction? And then also, I assume that there were some areas which you had to learn, you had to train your staff, because I remember you told me that it became EO qualified, which for the listening audience means that it was generating 7 figures and above. I think you said in about a year, which is phenomenal. Who doesn't want to start a business that's generating over 7 figures within a year? So what were the steps that you took that resulted in creating virtually from thin air a 7-figure business in a year?
So a couple of things. First, that was very much within our wheelhouse. I was able to borrow from the operations of Elite Editing in order to start that company. And still the operations are incredibly entangled, and sometimes in a good way, sometimes not. So, they work really well together, but it's really essentially the same operations team. And what it is still is a second services business. We're servicing a different type of client, but it's a business I know really well, which is how to create process around helping a lot of people at once, right? Doing work at scale, doing a large volume, how to provide quality control. That's ultimately the business that we're in is we write and edit millions of words a month, and anyone can find a writer to do one good piece. But in order to get to a level where you're guaranteeing quality at that volume, you have to focus on quality control process. So in that way, it was a very similar business. We worked really hard right away to find really good vendors. And because we were in the space, we were working with partners and clients in the publishing space. That was something that we were able to level up really quickly on, finding great vendors. I went after some really great talent. I've hired people who knew a lot more about it than I do or ever will. I have people on my staff who have 15, 20 years of publishing experience. And so when I have a question or thought, or someone who comes to me, a potential client, I'm like, great, I've got the person to talk to you. I've got an expert, and it's not me. And I'm really aware of that. It's still a business that's new to me and that I love learning about. I love publishing and I love books, but there are people who know it really well. So I hired those people. I borrowed from Elite Editing's operations. And I really just followed the same business model. And I'll tell you, it's a lot easier to start a second business, right? Because you haven't made all the mistakes, but you've made a lot of mistakes in that first business, and you've learned, and you're at a place, hopefully, where you're able to take those lessons with you. So it went a lot.
Give me an example or two of those. What were the types of mistakes that you made,
that,
other than the big one, the big client that you lost?
Right.
I don't even know if that's really a mistake, but what were some mistakes that you'd made with the first business that you didn't make with the second?
Yeah, I got out of the way with a lot of things. With my first business, I was so entrenched in all the details. I was so focused of having a hand in everything. And with the second business, I had great people. I hire people who are so smart and capable and who I trust implicitly. And I was able to lean on that trust. I think when you first start, you don't know yet what you're going to be comfortable with other people doing. It's your baby, it's your everything. And I think business owners in general, and certainly me, had a tendency to stay too close to things and to be involved and have a finger in every pot. And on the second business, I was like here's what we need. Let's talk about what needs to be done, and let's talk about who's going to do it. And really focused on letting people run and not stopping them and questioning them and keeping tabs. We were really fast and loose about it. I mean, I really always say we started Elite Authors out of the back of the trunk of Elite Editing's car. And we kind of tested it for a couple of months. We were like, is there a there? Let's find out. Are people going to want this? Is there room in the market? What does this sound like? What's our messaging? But at its core, and that's why we created Elite Creative. It's the same people, it's the same values, it's the same culture, it's the same model. And we focused on doing those things right and following what we knew worked for us.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm very proud of what we've built, and it certainly isn't me.
You know, there's so many businesses that are creative businesses where the end output, the production is something that's creative. And you talked about quality control for the creative process. How do you do that? You know, when it comes to editing, you know, or do you throw a, what is it called? Strunken Wagner or something like that? The editing, you know, here's your process guide. Like, just follow that, you know, or
the elements of style. Shout out to Chuck White. So, you know, editing and many other things it's a perishable skill, right? I'm not an editor anymore. I'm not allowed to edit my own emails anymore. You know, and my team's the first to tell you, like, you shouldn't send anything without showing us. But, you know, it really is, it's a very technical skill. And so understanding the ins and outs of it, and, you know, certainly finding people who are good at it is step one. But like anything else, quality control is really the same, whether you're in a factory or you're editing a book. It's turning it into a process, right? It's whether you video it, record it, write it down, whatever works best for you and the people you're working with. It's getting down the steps of, how did I get it from here when it came in front of me, when it passed my desk? How did I get it from here to when it's ready to go out? And dissecting those different steps and turning that into something that's repeatable and actionable is really what quality control is all about. And so I can't even imagine, if I had to count the number of pages of SOPs and process docs that we have in place. And a lot of times freelancers and contractors who come on are overwhelmed by the amount of materials they receive, because we don't want to leave anything to chance. And it's not about just finding someone who's a good editor, because, as I said, if you've got a team of 40, one writer or editor on that team might bomb an assignment or disappear in the middle or just become unavailable. The client should never feel that. They should never know. And the way that happens is by creating a really great process and quality control machine, really, that by the time it gets to the output, it's going to feel the same no matter what happened in between. And, you know,
how have you chosen to organize your business that supports what you just said? So, you know, in the agency world, there's kind of differences of opinion. Sometimes people organize by pods. So there might be a writer, an editor, a project manager, a couple of different skills together. Or another approach is to have everyone kind of organized in different sections where all the writers are together, all the editors together. Have you tested different models, and how have you settled on however you organize it now?
Yeah, it's something we're constantly learning and something we're constantly testing, because it is a really hard thing to figure out. I don't know if there's a right answer. I'll say the way that we do it is we do organize by department. So we have an editorial department and we have a project management department. And we really try and be very clear about what those roles are. And there's quality control and there's accountability within those teams. That being said, whenever we onboard a new client, and this is something we're now becoming much more intentional about, whether it's a tiny client or the biggest client in the world, we start with one project manager and one editorial lead. And there's still the people above them and below them that are going to be working with them, but there's really one owner, because when there's that level of accountability, people respond differently when it's theirs, when there's that level of ownership. So, you know, on our editorial team, for example, we used to just kind of have the project managers bring on a new client and say, okay, take a look around and figure it out and let us know what you need in order to do this well. Now we pick someone on that team. We say, who's this the right fit for? Who's going to own this? Who's going to tell us what we need? Who's going to be responsible for that research and discovery? And who's going to help build out the process in order to make this client successful? So we try really hard to keep from silos happening, because that's what pods are really good at, is that collaborative nature. And we use a lot of communication tools and other things to make that happen. Obviously, like many virtual businesses, we're in Slack, and we have the channels per client and per type of client. But for us, it's really about focusing on the fact that everything we do is about collaboration. The editorial team and the project management team should be working so closely together, and they are. And that's what I think makes it successful.
Yeah. I wanted to circle back to something you mentioned earlier. You said that your leadership team, your executive team, they were 3 freelancers, and they've risen through the ranks. I know that one of the things you've talked about is you got a coach for your senior leadership team. But in addition to that, what have you done in order to take them from freelancers to leadership in a company that has, a few hundred people when you add up all the employees, all the contractors, to move them into that role? Because not every freelancer is going to survive that kind of transition.
Right. And not every freelancer has. The majority of our team in general has come from our freelance pool. So that is something about the way we hire. We're very much about the cultural fit. And we're also about hiring for the person, not the position, because we have so much work to go around that goes among our freelancers. If someone is really just such a clear fit and just feels like one of us and is great at the work and passionate about the work, we usually try and find a place for them. A lot of times my conversations are, we think you should work here. What does that look like for you? Let's figure this out together. So we're not often putting out job descriptions and hiring for a specific job. Not that we haven't had to do that, but that's generally speaking not how we go out into the world. For these particular 3, they showed themselves, and I think that's true of any great leader within an organization. At some of the biggest organizations in the country, in the world, there are people that started out as an intern or an account manager, and now they run the company, right? It's I think for me, it's identifying that talent, identifying that sense of camaraderie. After that whole the incident of 2018.
Is that how it's referred to internally?
I don't even know. I probably should name it, probably should have some capital letters and trademark or something, because it's something we talk about so often. But at the end of 2018, I sat down with those 3 folks, and I gifted them each a piece of the business. And I told them that, you acted as if you were owners of this company. You every day you come in and you act as if you're an owner, and I want you to be an owner with me. I want you to have a piece of this and really be a part of its success, because you are. And so they're just all 3 individuals who showed themselves extraordinarily early to be the type of person that is going to stand by the company no matter what, and who's going to act as if they're an owner. It's not really, it's just, we all have people within our organizations where you look at them and you're like, I couldn't do this without you. I say that early, and I say that often, and I make sure they know how appreciated they are. And I get that back 100 times.
Sometimes businesses are so dramatically affected by a major incident or a turning point that it in many ways inhibits them, or they lose a bit of the magic, or it prevents them from taking risks. How do you prevent that incident from affecting you in that way?
I think it's just a bit of my nature to be delusionally optimistic, right? I think in order to start a business, in order to look at nothing, at blank space, and say, I'm going to make something here, and I think it's going to be great, you have to be a little delusionally optimistic, right?
Yeah.
All of us are. And I think that I know it sounds crazy, but even in that moment when I was sitting on the floor, I didn't ever think this is going to fail. I was more like, how do I gather my thoughts in order to make this succeed? So I don't know. I don't think it's in my nature to not jump after the next challenge and to not try and spear the next whale. That's the fun of why we do this.
Speaking of that, at the stage your business is at right now, what is your time spent most on? It sounds like you've replaced yourself in virtually, if not all areas, or most of the key areas that you would occupy in a smaller business. What do you focus your time on now?
So I think that my time is best spent focusing on the culture of the company and the vision of the company, and managing the leaders of the company. And by managing, I mean, the question I ask the most during the day is, what do you need and how can I support you in doing your job? Right. I think that's the most valuable thing I do. So it's not, I've certainly pulled myself out of the day-to-day operations. I have a phenomenal person who runs our operations. And that's been such a game changer. I'm still very involved in the business development, the relationship management. I almost never miss a call with our big clients. And even I don't know if size even really matters in that case. I really love being on the client side. I love making sure that we're moving forward. I like just kind of spitballing with people and organizations we're involved with and say, what else can we do? What else can we do together? We really like working together. And I think that's where a lot of growth happens, is in those in-between moments. So while I'm not involved in the operations, I'm always focused on what's next. And having conversations like this where I walk away and I'm buzzing with new ideas. That's where I want to be. And that's what I'm trying to spend time on.
Okay. Two last things I want to ask about. You created this freelancer experience to better onboard the contractors that join your company, to make it more of an experience for them, make them feel like part of the culture. Tell us a little bit about that.
I'm so glad you remember that, because I don't even remember talking about that. And that's something that's so fun and exciting for us. We call it the Elite Journey now. We gave it a name. But what it is, for so many freelancers, and I was a freelance editor, so I know this experience well. You're in a silo, you're kind of working in a black hole and sending work in, and work comes to you and it goes back. And your connection to the company is minimal, if existent at all. And we really wanted to change that, because our writers and editors are really a part of our team. And we wanted, as the company grew, we wanted that culture to filter down and be felt all the way down. So we created this Elite Journey, which starts as soon as you come on board, as soon as you sign that you're interested in working with us. And it involves, steps along the way of us. We send lots of gifts and swag and birthday presents and, holiday presents and first year anniversary gifts and things like that, to just show people that we appreciate them. We also we're starting now to do these monthly culture calls, where anyone who's hired that month, because in any given month, we could hire 15 to 20 new writers and editors, and just getting everybody on a call and having Laura, who manages our operations and who's really our key culture keeper, just talk about what it means to be elite, what our values are, and where we come from, and making sure that everyone feels connected to this company that they're working for. We also do a lot of coaching up and coaching down. So our quality control team, which is our senior editor team, they work with every single individual writer and editor. There's a huge feedback loop. There's a huge amount of coaching that happens in the beginning, not just about making sure that they're doing good work, categorically speaking, but also like, this is how we respond to things. This is how we give feedback. This is the voice that Elite talks in, so that people really understand and feel a part of the team.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I have to ask about the Gandalf Lego. I know you don't have it in front of you right now.
I know, right before we got on, I was like, do you want me to go grab my keys?
But tell us what it is.
So we, that same senior leadership team that I mentioned years and years ago, I think it was like 2015 or so, we did this really cool Lego experience that sounded completely zany, with actually the coach who works with each of my senior leadership members. Her name's Mandy Diamond. Shout out to Mandy. She's amazing. She's a lifesaver. And she did this whole process with us, kind of using that right side, creative side of our brain with Legos to come up with our core values. And in doing so, we ended up using this Gandalf Lego to represent something that was this kind of unspoken, unnamed thing that was in the room with us that we started calling our magic. And as we ended up defining it, we define it as our culture of collaboration, which is any one of us can do something really well. We're all smart, capable people. But when you throw it in the middle, when you throw it in the pot, what comes out is infinitely better. And that's our magic. That's what we think of as what makes us really great at what we do, is that collaboration. And we have a little Gandalf Lego that all of us have that represents that.
Very cool. All right. Last question I want to ask, which is, I'm a big fan of gratitude. And if you look around at your peers and your contemporaries, however you want to define that, it could be others in your EO forum or other entrepreneurs. It could be others in the writing, editing space or authoring space. Who do you respect? Who do you admire that's doing good work out there today?
Yeah, a lot of people. Certainly a shout out to my EO forum. I didn't get into that piece, but they played a huge role in my rebound in 2018. It was in my forum meeting that the idea was born of not just the idea, but the confidence for me that, if anyone can go start a company out of this rubble, it's you. And I left that meeting and thought, I'm going to go start a company right now. And my forum mates are amazing. And they've really just helped me not just level up in business, but believe that I'm capable of doing anything. So huge shout out to them. And also I have a couple of other women business owners in my life that I'm just really grateful for. I'm really grateful that I can really go there with and be vulnerable. Kate Ladon is one of them who introduced us. Mm-hmm. Mary Beth Highland is another. She does tremendous work around culture. And she's just been a true north for me as a business owner. So I'm very, very grateful to her. And just watching what they're doing in the world and what they're bringing just makes me want to be better.
Awesome. All right. Jen, I know that you have a social program to help authors to promote their book on social, elitecreative.com. Where else can people go to learn more about you, connect with you, and ask you a question?
Yeah. Elite Editing and eliteauthors.com are both the best places. I'm very active on social because that's what we believe, that's the best place to market yourself, to be a thought leader. So LinkedIn is a great place to connect with me for sure. And otherwise, just we're out there doing our thing and love meeting new authors, love meeting new businesses and seeing how we can help.
Jennifer, thanks so much. Great story.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure. Thanks, John.
Thank you for listening to the Smart Business Revolution podcast with John Corcoran. Find out more at smartbusinessrevolution.com. And while you're there, sign up for our email list and join the revolution.
Revolution.
And be listening for the next episode of the Smart Business Revolution podcast.